What's the dark secret that you've been hiding from everyone? When my grandpa was on his deathbed, he admitted to killing his fellow Marines in the Vietnam War for torturing young girls. Most of our family doesn't know. My grandpa was a pretty cool guy, very calm and mellow, so my mom and I were shocked when he admitted this to us. He was a gunsmith his whole life, and he was very proud of being a Marine. But the guilt that he carried from the war made him believe that he was being punished in the end. He died a really painful and very traumatic death, and I would never wish it upon anybody. I hope that it lets him rest easier in peace, that the majority of you commend what he did. I certainly never held any qualms about it. Most people in my family think that my mother recently died suddenly from complications due to cancer, but she really died from the toxic effect of hard drugs. Seems as though she just had herself a secret death party. Pest control technician here. You're paying too much for pest control. Whoever you hired, unless it's a fairly small company, they are ripping you off. Unless you have cockroaches or bed bugs, YouTube it. Times are hard enough right now. Nice try, bed bugs living in my house. The professionals are on the way. Sometimes I spend entire meetings wondering how they got the big meeting table through the door. Maybe the building was constructed around the table, and the table has always been, always will be, at that location, waiting to fulfill its purpose of hosting meetings. Not a huge secret in comparison to some of these answers, but I feel guilty about it pretty often. After my fiancé passed, I napped all the time for over a year. My aunt was calling me one day, and I just denied her call and went back to napping. It was my aunt calling because my grandma, who was very sick with cancer, wanted to say happy birthday a day before my birthday. Grandma died the next day. I should have picked up the damn phone. My uncle owned an old Camaro that collected dust in his garage. When I was around 10, my family and I were in town visiting and wrote the F word in the dust on the hood of the car. I used my thumb so that the letters were fatter than my normal index finger. A few hours later, my aunt and uncle asked us who did it, and I proved that it wasn't me by showing how the person who did it has bigger fingers than me, taking that to my grave. One of my closest coworkers, who's an integral part of our very large corporation, killed a man in his late teens and threw the body in a lake. He only got off on a technicality. I work remotely, so I don't get a lot of personal relationship building with people I work with regularly. I googled his full name. It freaked me out at first, but I've kind of gotten over it. I wonder if anyone else knows. It happened 40 plus years ago. I mean, he's going to retire soon, and then I might ask another coworker about it. I just don't want to stir the pot. My girlfriend started selling used pants and stuff online. Someone wanted used insoles from her shoes, so I walk for about 6 hours at a time at work and often just put her insoles in my shoes. Those perverts are getting off on the smell of my sweaty feet thinking it's a girl. This actually reminds me of an old video from way back. It opens up with an older guy opening up a package, which contains worn women's underwear sealed in a Ziploc bag. He opens the bag and he takes a deep whiff. The camera then pans to a dark room with flashing lights, and you see two Asian guys playing DDR wearing women's underwear. They have a third friend packaging up the undies to send out to the next customer. My grandpa was stationed in Okinawa, Japan, during the Korean War while in the Marines. He hooked up with a woman there, and she got pregnant. So I have a Japanese aunt and a few cousins in Japan whom I have never met before. My brother and I did a 23andMe. We discovered that we have a half-sibling, the same father, who's older than us. So I messaged them, but no reply. Since the half-sibling is older, it was during my father's military career, which was short-lived because he got a dishonorable discharge that he hides from his family still. I don't know why, but I always keep thinking that one day I'll cut all contact with everyone in my life, just disappear from their lives and keep to myself. I don't know why I think like this. I have some good friends. I've been an accessory to both my parents' infidelity. At age 5, my mom cheated on my dad while he was deployed, and my brother told me what was happening and that I shouldn't tell anybody. My father slept with a secretary 2 years later, for a few years, and would even bring me on dates with her, telling my mother that we were going to the movies. He took me to her house, and he had her roommate watch me while they went out, or just hang out in her room. They're still married. I don't know if either one knows what the other one did, or if they're still doing it, but when I was around 9 years old, I used my mom's credit card to sign up my a-hole alcoholic stepfather for an adult website in hopes of starting a fight and, well, her leaving him. FYI, she did leave after another year or so. Current stepdad's a real keeper. My wife and I aren't officially married. No one knows. We had a ceremony and everything, reception, the whole 9 yards. We just never did the official paperwork. We realized that since she's going back to school, it benefits her financially to go through the financial aid as single rather than married. When she finishes up, we're gonna go head over to the town hall and finish that last step. My adopted sister knows that her birth mother died in a freak accident. She doesn't know the cause of death was beheading. I worked with a guy that was a first responder to the accident. Well, owe someone $1,000? Your problem. Owe $100,000? Their problem, right? I fell off a roof at work a few days ago, about 8 inches to my side and head. I was rushing and I was being overconfident. I told my partner I fell on ice because she worries that I work alone. I could have died. No one would have known where I was until my body started to stink. To everyone asking me if I should seek help, I have. I received a CT scan and several x-rays on my arm, and I'm in the hospital awaiting results. I'm an insured Canadian independent contractor. I've got both private insurance and workplace insurance. I've been an addict my entire life. I used to drink all day, every day, before work, at work, after work. I'd occasionally fall asleep on my lunch break or leaving work and have to make up some illness to friends and family who are concerned. Today marks 185 days sober. When I was a teenager, I worked at a novelty tourist shop near me. Being the idiot that I was, I stole a wad of cash from the store. It was $100 in ones. I told nobody, but they knew it was missing. Right about the same time, a coworker who was always trying to get me fired was telling someone she got about $100 in tips from her other job. They ended up firing her because they didn't trust that it wasn't her. Everyone in my family is nagging me with the fact that I don't want to date girls anymore and think that I'm strange or gay. But I lost my girlfriend, which I assume I could have a good life with, and she committed suicide. And I never talk about that with them. I know I can speak with some members of my family, but my parents, when I was younger, I lived with my grandmother. Not long after I turned 18, her health started to decline. That sort of decline that, means she won't really be around for much longer. Over the months, I did my best to take care of her, getting her to the hospital when she needed to and other things. We had someone coming every day to help her with things that I couldn't. Well, what my family doesn't know is that the night that she passed, I was in my living room watching TV. My dog was in bed with my grandma, and I started to hear him whimper and bark. I knew what was happening. I knew that if I acted, I could potentially save her. I didn't want to watch her suffer anymore, though. I didn't want to watch her live with so much pain and just be unable to do anything for herself anymore. So I made the choice to let her pass before making any calls. She lived 92 years, and the only regret that I have is that if she had passed a month after, I would have graduated if I had been, kicked out of school. She had been in good enough health at the time to go to my graduation. I still kick myself for how stupid I was back then. When I was around 5 or 6, my mom and my dad were fighting just about every day. While I was napping on the couch when my mom came in very upset and shook me awake. She asked me if I saw the girl my dad brought home. I've always felt terrible because I hadn't seen anyone but my dad that whole day. Pretty sure he was just playing video games like usual, but for some reason, my sleepy kid brain, I answered yes. I said she was with him in their room. I'm honestly not sure why I lied like that, but they got a divorce shortly after, and I always felt like it was my fault. Until I recently found out that my little sister is actually my half-sister, but that is a whole other story. It's not a dark secret, I guess, but sometimes while I'm on the train to work, I mentally do whatever the opposite of road rage is. Like I'll pick a person and I'll aggressively think at them. I hope you get a crazy big tax refund. Or I hope you stumble across $20 on the sidewalk. Or I hope someone compliments you about something that you're normally insecure about. I think maybe I'm trying to balance the karmic scales or something, because it seems like so many folks do the opposite without really thinking about it too much. Hope you guys get a really comforting hug next time you need it most. Funny, lighthearted story from my childhood. My little brother was in the shower and I could hear him singing. I put a coat on backwards and a stocking cap I had pulled over my face, and I waited outside the bathroom door. He opened the bathroom door, still singing and dancing, kinda, and I did the Frankenstein thing. Arms out, moaning, He screamed and fell backwards, knocking the toilet completely over. Water went everywhere. The top of the toilet tank broke, and the shower curtain ripped down. And he was laying on the floor in the middle of all this. I ran back down the hall, coat and hat off, and sauntered back casually. By then, my mother and father and our sisters were there, and everyone was like, what the hell? I've heard him tell this story as proof of existence of ghosts. To this day, little fella is now 52-year-old bank manager with 2 kids. He believes in ghosts. I don't feel a bit bad. After my parents got divorced, my stepdad basically moved right in and started abusing me. I knew it was wrong deep down somewhere, but I figured since he was adult, he knew what he was doing, and I would trust him. One night, my sister caught him red-handed and flipped out and told my mom. Cops came and he got arrested. It's only like 9 or 10, so a lot of this is a blur. At first, my mom had me sleeping in bed with her at night and was babying me, and I loved it. One day, months later, we were walking home from school and I saw my dad's van sitting outside of our house. We weren't allowed in and we saw garbage bags sitting outside. My dad told us that my mom had called him earlier this week and told him that if he didn't come and get us, she would get rid of us. And she wouldn't come out and talk to us, and I cried. My dad lived in another state, so this meant that we'd have to leave our friends in our hometown. Our friends ran after the van as we drove away. For a few years, she wouldn't talk to us because she'd allowed my stepdad to come back, so that's why she stayed away. I guess she didn't want to face us after what she'd done. She had chosen chosen a man who had abused her own child over her own children. Eventually, we had a relationship with her again, but she was so sick. The funny thing is that she's in a really high up position from one of the largest banks in America. Professionally, people think she's amazing. She's a monster. I finally had the courage to cut her out when I went to recovery from heroin addiction 11 years ago, and I haven't spoken to her since. Very few people know this story, but not many, and it felt good to get it out to the world. My life has flourished since cutting her off. People always say how I need my mom. Don't be scared to boot family out of your life just because they're family. Seriously. Thank you for allowing me to share this.